to 8, and then I'll do the silent count from there. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Are the number 3 seed in the NFC playoffs, and they will have a matchup against them where they will be taking on the likes of, well, I got to think of the math because my brain's a little fried like there, but the New York Giants. The New York Giants in that round and the matchup, it looks like it'll be a rematch of earlier this season. But here with me to talk about the Minnesota Vikings, a person who's been on here representing Vikings fandom for past several years. And in the era, I guess I call it the Kirk Cousins era because he outlasted Mike Zimmer, the Kirk Cousins era. It is, I don't know if you're confident or jaded or resigned to what's going to happen right now, David, but I appreciate it. This is David Kraus. Again, a lot of you guys have seen him before, and he's back again. David, how are you doing this evening?
Hi, Earl. I'm doing really well. It's the end of the week, and I'm really glad to be here to talk some Vikings football.
I know this question we always ask everybody all the time, but how did you become a Vikings fan, and how long have you been a Vikings fan in general?
Yes, I've been a Vikings fan for approximately 26 years now. I started following them when I first saw them on TV in 1997. Was Randall Cunningham was their quarterback, and not knowing him too well from Philly because I was pretty young at the time, but I didn't have a set team growing up here in Pittsburgh, and I saw the Steelers get killed in the Super Bowl. Didn't grow up in a household with really sports fans, so I just started watching as a casual, and Vikings caught my eye on TV. I like the jerseys, I like the color scheme, and I liked Randall Cunningham's game. And then the next year I started following him a little bit more. They drafted Randy Moss, and had some great receivers. And it's just kind of, been a fan ever since then.
What is your most memorable Vikings moment, good or bad? I can think of probably a number of different things that you could say are etched in your memory.
Well, there's a lot of bad, probably more bad than good, but I'll try to keep positive and stay positive here. And I actually have two. One is one I've mentioned before in the past, and that's obviously the Minneapolis Miracle. Just a unbelievable finish. This is with Case Keenum as your quarterback. Diggs on the sideline. Marcus Williams misses the tackle. Doesn't run out of bounds to give the kicker a chance. It's in Minneapolis. Crowd goes nuts. Absolutely insane finish. Saints thought they had the game won. Everyone thought it was over. I lost it. And then that momentum to get to the NFC Championship game was just awesome. But I actually have two. The second one is actually new from this year, and that's the Vikings-Bills game. Just the ending of that game and the catch by Justin Jefferson was just I never get sick of watching that. Like, just unbelievable, and just it still baffles me how he caught that pass.
Expectations going into the season. New coach. Gone as Mike Zimmer comes in. O'Connell comes in. What were you expecting this team to do? It seems like it was sort of a team that was turnkey, and as long as he didn't go backwards from what Zimmer did. There was nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, I didn't expect 13-4. I didn't know a ton about Kevin O'Connell from a coaching perspective. I remember when he was a player and watched him in college and getting drafted and everything. And I was ready to move on from Zimmer, and I was hoping wild card. I thought wild card at best because they had the offense. It was just a matter if the defense could hold on to games, and they obviously exceeded expectations and ended up pulling through and winning the close games that they lost under Zimmer the last few years. So yeah, I definitely thought with that offense, though, assuming everyone was healthy, that they were going to put up points and they were going to be entertaining to watch.
Was there a point in the season that you were confident Minnesota was going to the playoffs?
Yeah, I think I would say so. They started off. They got killed at Philly week week 2, very second game after they beat Green Bay in the opener, and then they started off 5-1, and then went 6-1, and then after the Buffalo game, they won that on the road last minute fashion to go 8-1. And at that point was like, okay, we're not only going to make the playoffs, but we have a chance to pretty much run away with the division because Chicago's terrible and Green Bay and Detroit at that time were stinking. So they came on late to make it, interesting, and they both just missed the playoffs. But yeah, I would say it was, when they ended up starting off 6-1.
The question is, while there wasn't a concern that the Vikings were going to crater, it was more of a situation of where you're more what concerned you the most? Was it that Dallas game? Was it even the Washington game where it probably shouldn't have come down to an ending like that?
Well, yeah, I feel like every week with them, the last couple of years has come down to the last possession. I remember even last year, the Cleveland game, Detroit game, just Green Bay, ones that came down to the very last play of the game that, either a flag wasn't called or, a player dropped the pass or, pass interference that led the other team from scoring. So many close calls that it was very stressful. But to answer your question for this year, I was never really concerned that they would necessarily miss the playoffs or anything like that, considering the fast start. But it was just all of the losses were not close, at Philly, Dallas, that Green Bay game right before the last week of the season, and then they lost to the Lions by 11, if I recall, the second time that they played them. So none of those were really close games, and all those 4 teams are good football teams, and other than Detroit, are in the playoffs. Well, not Green Bay, but half of those teams were in the playoffs, and the other 2 could have easily made the playoffs. So it was just a concern of okay, they're not being competitive with these really top-notch teams, and that's cause for concern come January football.
Now, we already know the matchup is already set as the Vikings take on the Giants, but who in the NFC playoffs do you feel that the Vikings match up the best with?
Honestly, they're playing them this week. And I say that because I feel like out of all the NFC teams, the Giants are probably the least intimidating, the least, you're not necessarily worried about Daniel Jones. Yeah, Barkley's had a good bounce back year and he's been healthy for the most part, but none of the receivers scare you. Some of the they got a nice young defensive line, but they don't have anybody that, I got to stay away from that guy, or we can't let this guy beat us. So take that with the other teams that are in the playoffs in the NFC, and then the fact that Vikings already beat them. Hence, it was a close game as usual, but they beat them at home, and they got a playoff game at home with the same team. So I think they'll be prepared. I am a little bit concerned about the offensive line. It seemed like they're beat up a little bit, and some key guys are out. But I think it's a very winnable game and the best matchup that they could have possibly asked for.
Who in the NFC scares you the most? Is it Philly? Is it San Francisco? Is it Tampa Bay? I know that everybody overlooks Tampa Bay, but as long as number 12 is the signal caller there has to be a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, definitely. I think all those teams, even Dallas, I could see that game going either way if Dallas is on top of their game and Dak doesn't turn the ball over, I think that they can beat Tampa. But it's just tough with the way Brady's played against them in his career, and they're at home. But I would say, based on the home field advantage and the fact that they always seem to do well against Minnesota, particularly in the playoffs, I would say the Eagles. It's always tough to play in Philly. Like I said, that the year of the Minneapolis Miracle, got killed by Nick Foles in Philly, got killed by them earlier this year in Philly, and it's just a tough place, tough environment, and a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins against a top defense that has some guys that can beat you both running the ball and then down the field with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert and a bunch of the weapons that they have there. So that's what I would say for them is playing in Philly.
The question I would always ask, I know before Minnesota, of course, has had its pedigree of different wide receivers from Chris Carter to Randy Moss to Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. Now Justin Jefferson he's a man among boys, and he's putting up video game-like numbers, especially in this offense. What do you think has been the reason that Jefferson has had so much success this year?
Yeah, that's a great question. I feel like, to start off, he's had success every year, going back to LSU and obviously the first 3 years in the NFL. But I think it's just a combination of not a great, but a consistent running game, as well as Cousins being pretty steady for the most part. And he's got some picks, he's got some turnovers, but he's been pretty solid. They got good play from Hawkinson when he came over, and Adam Thielen, doesn't get a ton of yards, but he still, had 6 touchdowns this year, over 70 receptions. He's still kind of a force there. But yeah, Jefferson's just so precise, with his route running, and after the getting himself open after the catch, he's just a flawless wide receiver. He's fearless. Will get hit. He'll go deep. He can make one-handed contested catches. Just a great overall wide receiver, and I'm definitely glad he plays for the Vikings.
I guess also looking at we mentioned Kevin O'Connell and his his background being a former quarterback and things like that. What do you feel he does differently than Mike Zimmer?
You know what? I think that's a good question. And at the end of the last question, I was going to say, I think O'Connell as well has made a concerted effort to get Jefferson the ball. But I think a lot of it is motivation, Earl. I think a lot of it, I've watched a lot of his post-game speeches and locker room interviews, and, just getting the guys ready. And, the team believes in him to the max, and it's just a different look in the players' eyes than what they had with when Zimmer was there. So I think everyone's going, balls to the walls to play to their maximum effort for Kevin O'Connell, because they know that he has their back, and he's just getting the best out of everyone. And, that's not, even the defense just isn't good this year. They're giving up a ton of yards. They gave up like 500 plus yards to Mike White and the Jets. Jared Goff rocked them a couple times. So it's just, winning those close games and time management, making the right timeouts, doing the right blitzes at the right times, and, just getting your playmakers the ball, where it seemed like Zimmer the last couple of years was just very conservative and, was trying to, do prevent defense, and just wasn't working with the guys that they had, and wasn't using his top guys to the maximum of their capabilities. So it's nice to see some young blood in there, and to see, O'Connell relate to the players with what appears a lot more and a lot better than Zimmer did.
Do you feel like with some coaches, even though the success Zimmer had, some coaches just have a shelf life with the rosters they have?
Yeah, I definitely think that that's fair. And I was always a big Zimmer fan. Like 3-4 years ago, people were calling for him to get fired, and I always stood up for him and thought that he wasn't the problem. Kirk Cousins wasn't the problem. There were other issues on the team, offensive line, secondary, just a lot of draft picks that didn't work out for them. And, a lot of players that got hurt right away and just, didn't come through But yeah, I think even now we're starting to see it with some coaches. Maybe Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and a lot. Lovie Smith obviously has been around. A lot of coaches that just maybe the game's kind of passing them up a little bit. With, like you said, with being having the same roster for years and not winning games when it matters.
Going on to the Super Bowl prediction, who do you have coming out of the NFC? Who do you have coming out of the AFC? Who wins the Super Bowl, and what is the final score?
Okay, so I have to say, preseason, before the season started, I had San Francisco over Tennessee, and obviously Tennessee is not in. So I will, even with Brock Purdy in there with that defense, and up until they meet Philly, they'll have home field. So I'm going to stick with San Francisco, although I would love to see Minnesota in there. But I'm going to stick with San Francisco, and I think Cincinnati runs the table. I think Cincinnati makes a return. They seem to be healthy right now, and the offense is clicking. Mixon's healthy. All the receivers are out there and ready to roll. Burrow seems to be getting rid of the ball and playing at another level. Probably will finish second in MVP behind Mahomes. I think that they can get there, and I think that they can that they will beat San Francisco. I would say Cincy 23, San Francisco 17.
Probably one of the lower scoring estimates that I've heard so far. But I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to participate in this broadcast and this podcast.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Before we wrap this up, I wanted to know if you had any shout outs you wanted to give, any way people can reach out to you on social media to discuss Vikings football and then some, and Utah Jazz basketball and Atlanta Braves baseball as well.
Yeah, no, necessarily no shout outs, other than, to you for asking me to do this, and to, for working hard to try and cover all the teams and get the scoop, and caring about everyone's prediction. So that's appreciated. And like I said, these things are fun. But I'm on social media, pretty much every platform, but mainly Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, I'm just David Kraus, and Instagram, my name is Kraus Daddy. So anyone that wants to talk football or Vikings specifically, feel free to message me or send me a request.